Welcome to Coffee with Viking. I am Mike. Cheers. First Kings. From glory to shame, kings lead the way. King David grows old. On his deathbed, he declares that Israel's next king, as we already know, is the son he had with Bathsheba, the wisest king of all, King Solomon. Since David has already overpowered Israel's enemies, Solomon is free to develop the nation. For 40 years, Israel's most glorious generation, he reigns in prosperity and peace. During that time, he builds Israel's first permanent worship center, a temple in Jerusalem. Then he adds a palace and he fortifies cities throughout Israel, making them easier to defend. Solomon's biggest claim to fame, however, is the fact that when God asked him if he wanted any gift, anything he wanted, what would it be? He said wisdom. Yet he marries 1,000 women, not particularly a wise choice. In his old age, these women lure him into worshiping their idols. For this sin, God declares that Solomon's dynasty will lead only a fraction of Israel, just a single tribe of Judah. After Solomon dies, his son threatens to tax the people even more harshly than Solomon had done. So the northern tribes secede from the Union and form their own country, Israel. The southern nation takes the name of Judah after the tribe. Bible writers give the kings of Israel a poor evaluation, calling them men who do evil in the Lord's sight. Two of the worst rulers are Ahab and Jezebel. Many of Judah's kings get bad marks too. So God starts sending prophets like Elijah and Elisha. They warn the Jewish leaders that God will punish their nations unless the Israelites honor their agreement to obey him. In most cases, sadly, the kings ignore God's prophets. The main point of 1 Kings, Israel splits into two nations, north and south. It's God's punishment because King Solomon led the Israelites into idol worship. The writer of this book is unknown. 1st and 2nd Kings were originally one book, just like 1st and 2nd Samuel. About a century before Jesus was born, scholars translating the Jewish scriptures into Greek split this book in half so it would fit on regular-sized rolls. The stories in this two-part book stretch about 400 years, from the time of David until invaders destroyed Jerusalem in 586 BC. That means the writer or editors probably compiled the material from royal records and other sources sometime later, perhaps while the Jews were still exiled in what is now Iraq, then called Babylon. The date that this book was written, the stories in 1 Kings covers a little more than a century. They start during the final final years of David's reign, which ended in about 970 BC, and they continue a few years past the death of King Ahab in about 850 BC. And the location, of course, is Israel. Now, on this side note, mothers in court pleading their case to King Solomon, two women roommates claim the same infant son, while neither claims the dead one, pointing an angry finger at the living child who's dangling before a soldier's sword. One of the women encourages King Solomon to carry out his threat, split the boy so each woman gets half. Solomon knows right then that she's not the mother, and Israelites know they've got a wise king. And there's a painting of that. How Solomon's mom crowned him king. 1 Kings 1:20 and 21. Bathsheba to dying David. All Israel is waiting for you to announce who will become king after you. If you do not act, my son Solomon and I will be treated as criminals as soon as my lord the king has died. Solomon is not the crown prince. He's not next in line to become king after David. Solomon is way down the line. David had at least 16 sons by the time he met Solomon's mother Bathsheba. Adonijah is the current crown prince, and he's already throwing a pre-coronation bash while his father lies dying. The prince has already lined up the backing of most of his younger brothers. Israel's commanding general and an influential priest. But the prophet Nathan favors young Solomon, perhaps an insight he gets from God. The way the Bible reports it, Nathan tricks old David. Nathan convinces Bathsheba to plant the idea in David's memory-fogged head that he vowed to make Solomon king. And while you are still talking with him, Nathan tells Bathsheba, I will come and confirm everything you have said. And that is 1 Kings 1:14. Nathan asks if David has changed his mind about Solomon since Adonijah is already celebrating. David responds by crowning Solomon that day. News travels quickly to Adonijah's party, and the guests stumble over each other in their rush to get out. Party over. Apparently not ready to give up, Adonijah later asks his little brother Solomon if he can marry one of the women of the royal harem. Perhaps he thinks Solomon won't realize that this would give Adonijah added support for arguing that he's the rightful king. As David's oldest son, who would also be married to one of David's former wives, Adonijah would have a good case for the kingship. Kings often married the wives of the previous king for this very reason, to justify their right to the throne. Solomon figures it out instantly and orders his brother executed. Stay strong in the word of the Lord. Stay blessed. Stay caffeinated. Much love.